Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's October 8th. Last night, I met with my social media team, and we were having so much fun coming up with designs and quotes and all kinds of things for merchandise for the show. We're putting together t-shirts and mugs and tote bags and stickers. With any luck, we'll have Daily Gardener gear and merchandise ready to go live for you November 1st. So keep that in mind. If you're a fan of the show, you can add the Daily Gardener merchandise to your wish list for the holidays. So stay tuned for updates on that. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the German botanist Johann Baptist Zies, who was born on this day in 1779. The genus Zizia, or Zizia, which has 3 species, was named in honor of Zies. Zizia plants are one of my favorites. They bloom for a long time, and they're a great source of pollen and nectar in the garden. Zizia are in the carrot family, and they have stems that are 1 to 3 feet tall. The flowers are a compound umbel with many small flower heads. They look a little otherworldly. The root of Zizia was used by Native Americans to treat pain. In the wild, Zizia are found in meadows, on the edges of woods, and in thickets. In the garden, it's a nice plant to grow in part shade, and it makes for a lovely ground cover. Zizia aurea, the species, is known by the common name golden Alexanders. Aurea is from the Latin word for golden yellow, for the golden yellow flowers. Golden Alexanders are easy to grow, and they're a host plant for the black swallowtail butterfly, and they attract loads of other pollinating insects as well, like the golden Alexander's mining bee, which was named for its special relationship with the Zizia. The early leaves of Zizia aurea have beaded magenta edges, which adds to their charm in the garden. And in private plant sales over the past decade, gardeners report that Zizia aurea sells like hotcakes, and they make a beautiful cut flower. So another reason to put it in your garden. Finally, golden Alexander pairs beautifully with exuberant purple blooms like the false blue indigo or baptisia or salvia May night. Today is the birthday of the English naturalist William Swainson, who was born on this day in 1789. Swainson subscribed to the quinarian system, a taxonomic theory that grouped animals and plants into groups of 5 or multiples of 5. He stubbornly adhered to that system even after Darwin's origin was gaining traction. In 1840, Swainson immigrated to New Zealand with his second wife and all but one of his children. He faced numerous setbacks while there, including the fact that many of his belongings, all of his books and proofs, which were aboard a separate ship, were lost at sea. Once in New Zealand, Swainson struggled financially. He survived a fire and an earthquake. Before he died, Swainson sent a letter to his son, Willie. He wrote, "I am much pleased of your increasing fondness for gardening, and shall always be happy to send you anything I can spare from this place. A garden, as Bacon says, is the purest of human pleasures, and truly do I find it so, as in youth, so an age. And no other outdoor recreation is so delightful to me. Today is the birthday of the Florida botanist Hardy Brian Croom, who was born on this day in 1797. Croom was trained as a lawyer, but since his inheritance from his father was substantial, he never practiced. As Croom matured, he began pursuing specialties like geology, mineralogy, and botany. When it came to botany, there was no botanist that Croom admired more than John Torrey, with whom he corresponded. In 1834, Croom became an early landowner in Tallahassee. At the time, Florida was still a territory. Hardy Croom loved the Tallahassee region, and he set about building a home there for his family. In fact, Croom bought not one, but 2 plantations with his fortune. As he traveled between them, he would study the exciting natural flora and fauna. One day, as he traveled between the 2 plantations, Croom was waiting for a ferry along the east bank of the Apalachicola River when he discovered a new tree species and a new little plant growing in the shade canopy. Croom named the tree Torreya taxifolia in honor of his mentor, John Torrey. One of the oldest tree species on Earth, the Florida Torreya is also known by various common names, including gopher wood, yew-leafed Torreya, Torreya wood, savin, stinking savin, and stinking cedar for the strong odor of the sap and from the leaves and seed when they're crushed. The local legend is that the Torreya was the biblical gopher wood used by Noah to build the ark. To this day, the rare tree grows naturally only in this part of the world, along the roughly 30-mile stretch of the Apalachicola River between Chattahoochee and Bristol. There's another species of the same genus growing in California, and it's known as the California nutmeg. In a newspaper account from 1947, the Torreya taxifolia that Croom had planted by the Florida Capitol building over a century earlier was still standing. Disease and aggressive harvesting nearly annihilated the tree species during the 20th century. Since the wood of the Torreya does not rot, it was used especially for fence posts and shingles, as well as Christmas trees. Only 200 survive today. At the same time Croom discovered the Torreya taxifolia, he discovered another little new plant species. This one would bear his name, the Croomia passiflora. Asa Gray, who was Torrey's assistant at the time, recalled Croom's modesty, saying, "I was a pupil and assistant of Torrey when Mr. Croom brought him specimens, and I well remember Croom's remark that if his name was deemed worthy of botanical honors, it was gratifying to him, and that it should be borne by the unpretending herb which delighted to shelter itself under the noble Torreya tree." So in botany, as in life, Croom grew happily in the shadow of Torrey. In 1837, one day after Croom's 40th birthday, Croom, his wife, and their 3 children, 2 girls aged 15 and 7, and a son aged 10, all died when the steamboat Home was caught in a hurricane off of Cape Hatteras. Croom's body was never recovered. Tomorrow will be the 182nd anniversary of the disaster, which claimed the lives of 90 souls of the 130 that were aboard the steamboat that night. There were only 2 life vests on the boat. After the home steamboat tragedy, Congress required seagoing ships to carry a life preserver for each passenger. The loss of the entire Croom family created a legal dispute between the remaining family members. The matter remained unsettled for nearly 2 decades, and it hinged on attempting to discern which family member died last. Based on eyewitness testimony, incredibly, the court finally agreed that Croom's 10-year-old son was the last to die in the waves of the ocean, and that the bulk of Croom's estate would be passed to his mother-in-law and not to his brother Brian. Floridians naturally supported the Croom side of the dispute, and newspaper reports often said that the decision could just as well have been made with a Ouija board. And it was on this day in 1877 that Elizabeth Agassiz, the wife of the naturalist and famous Harvard professor Louis Agassiz, met with Longfellow to get his opinion on the first couple chapters of The Life of Agassiz, her biography of her husband. In Louise Hall Tharp's book about the family, a memory was shared that described Elizabeth in the garden. She was wearing a fresh white morning gown, basket and shears in hand, going leisurely with her rather stately air from border to border, and then coming back into the porch and arranging flowers in different vases. Lemon verbena and heliotrope she always had in abundance, so the rooms were fragrant with them, and she had a glass tank on the porch in which she kept pond lilies. Around the same time, her neighbor Arthur Gilman stopped over to visit. He couldn't find a suitable high school for his daughter Grace. It was the beginning of Radcliffe College, and Elizabeth would be Radcliffe's first president. In Unearthed Words, here's a quote from Nova Blair. "October's poplars are flaming torches, lighting the way to winter." And here's a quote from Valentin Ironmonger, a Finnish writer. "Summer is better, but the best is autumn. It is mature, reasonable, and serious. It glows moderately and not frivolously." Today's book recommendation is Growing Herbs from Seed, Cuttings and Root by Thomas DiBaggio. This book came out in 1995. DiBaggio raised herbs for a devoted clientele at his nursery in Loudoun County, Virginia. He's known especially for his superb varieties of rosemary and lavender. This book is one of my favorites, offering an abundance of step-by-step photographs to ensure success for even brown-thumbed gardeners. And I love what Jim Wilson of the Victory Garden wrote in the foreword of this book. "Learning about herbs is both simple and complicated. The aroma of one sometimes mimics that of another, and several herbs may share a common name." Very true. Here's today's garden chore. If you have your hens and chicks in pots, today's as good a day as any to begin to dig a trench to bury them. I do this every year. I love to put hens and chicks in herb pots, the pots that have all the little openings on the side. But if you leave them out over the winter, since they're above ground, the plants will die. So the trick is to bury them. I'll dig a trench and then I'll lay the pot on its side, and then I'll cover it with leaves and mulch to make it easy to retrieve in the spring. One gardener friend of mine taught me that when you bury hens and chicks in the winter, they continue growing and having little baby chicks all the way through December. And every spring, it's so fun to uncover the pots and see all the little baby chicks, which I then snip off and use for projects. I'll use this trenching technique to cover other items I've made with succulents, like my succulent wreath, as well as items covered in moss. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 2009, the botanist Kelly Norris wrote a post about the color of fall and his favorite plants in a post called Candy Shop. Here's what he wrote. Today, I'd like to share with you some of my favorite candies from around the Iowa State University campus. Dream no longer of purple smoke tree, the purple blight on the landscape. Instead, think a little bigger, heftier, and prettier. American smoke tree boasts conspicuous, smoky flower clusters in midsummer, puffing out like billowy clouds of not-so-pink cotton candy. My next find is a colony of dwarf Fothergilla gardenii. These happy companions to daphnes and rhododendrons look sumptuous this time of year with yellows, greens, oranges, and reds. Perfect for borders or that small bed where you'd like a shrub, but you don't have much room. A most elegant specimen is Cheonanthus virginicus, our native fringe tree. Dangling silver-white blossoms adorn all limbs of the plant in late spring. The best part of the show comes along in the fall when lime green foliage ages to baked gold, providing a glowing backdrop for chocolate chip-like drupes that dangle where the flowers once did. And Heptacodium myconioides, or seven suns flower, was dripped in bright pink this morning, thanks to the colorful sepals left behind from the white flowers that finished several weeks ago. My last plant of note is a red-twig dogwood. I know what could be so fascinating about the most overplanted dogwood in American history. But just take a look at this amazing specimen's fall color. Even the most ordinary plants can earn their keep when you take a moment to look past what makes them ordinary. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow. merchandise is here. The merchandise is here. Johann Baptist I am much pleased of your increasing fondness for gardening, and shall always be happy to send you anything I can spare from this place for a fee. Just joking. One of the oldest tree species on Earth, the Florida toria, is known as the stinking cedar. And she had a glass tank on the porch in which she kept pond lilies. Hey, I want to do that. Valentin Ironmonger. Ironmonger. Ooh, sounds scary. I like to think of the autumn months as the calendar's candy shop. Amen, Callie Norris.